Well, just like in other areas of mathematics, we see the concept of inverses. In other words, subtraction is the inverse of addition, and division is the inverse of multiplication, and vice versa. And we see it time and time again, inverses. When we're talking about trigonometric functions, we can also have inverses as well. In other words, we can have an inverse sine, an inverse cosine, an inverse tangent. Sometimes they're called arcsine, A-R-C-S-I-N-E, arcsine, arc cosine, arctangent. That would mean just the same as the inverse of those. And what applying the inverse of a trigonometric function will allow us to find a missing angle measure if we know the trigonometric ratio. If, in other words, if we know the side lengths that would make up the given trigonometric ratio, will help us to find an angle. And in a few moments, we're going to go over to the calculator, because our calculator has inverse functions there on our keyboard that will help us discover this. But first, we're going to set this up. So here we're asked to find x and round it to the nearest tenth if necessary. So in looking at this right triangle here, and we're asked to find the value of x, this angle measure, I can see that, well, here's the hypotenuse, because it's directly across from the right angle. And this is the adjacent angle to this angle x. And so, let's see, so cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So I could use the inverse cosine function to find the angle measure, and I can just say, and you may want to jot this down as we move over to the calculator, x is equal to the inverse cosine, and we denote that by this -1 as a superscript, of 15, the adjacent side, over the hypotenuse. And we'll calculate that in a moment. Right now here again, we're just doing the setup for this. Now let's look at this second triangle. All right, so here is x. This is what I'm being asked to find. And let's take a look at what side lengths we know. Well, this 27 is the opposite side to angle x. And this side length here, the 18, well, that's the adjacent side. And of course, this is the hypotenuse down here, but we don't know what that side length is. And we don't need to know to find that angle of x using an inverse trigonometric function. So let's see, what trigonometric function can we use? SOHCAHTOA, opposite over adjacent. Well, I know the side lengths of the opposite side and the adjacent side to angle x. And so again, I can set this up as x equals the inverse tangent of 27, opposite side, over 18, the adjacent side. All right, now, hold on. We're going to move over to our calculator, and we'll use it to help us determine the angle measures of x in these two right triangles. Okay, well, we're going to find our angle measure using the inverse trigonometric function of the triangles that we looked at just before. But when we're talking about finding angle measures, angles can be represented in either degrees or radians. And so in this case, we're going to find the angle measure in degrees. But I always want to make sure that I'm in the right mode when I'm dealing with trigonometric functions. So I'm going to click this mode button right here, mode. And let's see. Well, right now I'm in, if I come down here to this fourth line, I see that I'm in radian mode. So I'm going to scroll down to it and move my cursor over to the degree mode, and I'm going to hit enter. So I want to make sure I'm in the right mode. All right. Now, in that first triangle, we said that we could use the inverse cosine because we knew the adjacent side and the hypotenuse of angle X. And so we're going to, and that was 15 over 17, adjacent over hypotenuse. And so I'm going to hit the second button. Then I'm going to go down here to the, well, I need to quit this first, I guess. All right, back to my math screen. All right, I'm going to hit the second and then the cosine button. If you look right above the cosine button here, if you can see this cursor moving around, I see cosine to the -1. So I'm going to click that. I've already hit the second, and you can see I've got cosine -1, and we're going to put in, it was 15 over 17. Close our parentheses. And we're going to hit enter. And I see I've got 28, and we were asked to round it to the nearest tenth. So I got 28.07 or 28.1. That would be the angle measure in degree when we have a cosine of 15 over 7. Now our second triangle, we had a tangent because we knew the opposite side and the adjacent side. And so that was, the opposite side was 27, whatever units that was in. And the adjacent side was 18. And so we're going to just simply do the same thing. I'm going to hit second. And this time I'm hitting tangent. And again, I can see the tangent, the inverse tangent symbol, tangent -1. So I'm going to hit tangent. And let's see, it was 27 over 18. Close my parentheses and hit enter. And that angle measure for X, when the opposite side is 27 and the adjacent side is 18, using the tangent function, gives me an angle measure of 56.3. Remember to get in the right mode. You always want to check that first. Am I trying to find radians? Am I trying to find degrees? Which one are you working with? Make sure you're on the proper one. Sometimes you'll switch back and forth as we'll be asked to find things in both radians and degrees as we move along. All right, there we go. Finding a missing angle measure with our calculator.